Shalom, this is Yair Davidiy, speaking to you from the land of Israel. I represent Brit-Am, an organisation, a movement that studies the whereabouts of the Lowlanders tribes. We have found descendants of Lowlanders tribes of Israel amongst Western nations. Originally, we had 12 tribes of Israel. There were 12 tribes of Israel together in the land of Israel, the land of Greater Israel, which was much larger than most people suppose. And this land of Israel was one kingdom under the rulership of King Saul, then King David, then King Solomon, then King Rehoboam. In the time of Rehoboam, the kingdom divided, 10 of the tribes separated, and they created their own kingdom of Israel to the north, whereas in the south, those who remained, the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, most of Levi, they formed the kingdom of Judah. And from the kingdom of Judah came the central core, the people who created the Jewish people, the Jews as we know them today. The rest of the tribes, the majority of the tribes, 10 of the tribes were conquered by the Assyrians, taken into exile, deported, moved out, and they eventually moved. They migrated, moved to the north, moved to the west. They re-coalesced in Western Europe, created nations of Western Europe. And more or less they stayed together in their tribal formations that they had before they left. In some cases they re-coalesced different groups of the one tribes, tended, as they had moved by an unseen force, to re-coalesce, to come back together. And we identify these different groups in the different countries according to the majority tribal formations that created them and their origins, also according to tribal signs, tribal characteristics, combination of different identifying factors that enable us to approximately locate where the tribes of Israel are to be found today. And we find that Britain was dominated by the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. Manasseh was predominant in Scotland, whereas Ephraim was the determinant factor in England. In Ireland, there were also members of the tribes of Joseph, but in addition to that, there were members of the tribe of Dan and the tribes of Asher and other tribes. And we can prove these identifications from these tribes in Western Europe, areas where the Lowlanders tribes settled in Western Europe. They also gave rise to countries overseas, to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the USA. And the USA, through a combination of factors, came to be dominated by the tribe of Manasseh, even though within the population of the USA of America, you have people from all over, not only Israelites, but also others. But you have many Israelites. And amongst the Israelites, the tribe of Manasseh was predominant. Now, tribe of Manasseh was predominant. And not only that, we can show a connection between the people from Manasseh in the USA and the people from Manasseh in Scotland. Most presidents of America, as we will see, most presidents of the USA are Scottish or Ulster Scotch, similar to the Scotch, the same as the Scotch in effect, ancestry to a large degree, and also personages of Scottish descent or Scotch or Ulster descent were very important in the formation of America and in the ideological factors that gave rise to the American Constitution and American thought. And in the prophecy, Manasseh is represented by the USA. And as we said, the elements that pertain to Manasseh that were in Scotland played an important role in all of this. And talk is going to concentrate on Scotland and showing the elements from Manasseh that were in the Scottish people and the characteristics of Manasseh that enable us or help us to affirm the presence of Manasseh in amongst the Scottish people. Should also mention the fact that most of you are aware of, today the government of Scotland, Scottish public opinion, they're anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, they're virulently, very strongly against the Jews and against the state of Israel, antagonistic, vicious, and not British, one could say, in their attitude towards the Jewish people, even though the Jews have not done anything and done much less, even according to the worst claims made against them, the present situation, the Jews have done nothing that is worse than what the Arabs have been doing to themselves and to the black peoples and to other peoples, and they're still doing that in the Sudan and elsewhere, and no one is saying anything about it. The antagonism, and the propaganda and the commotion that's being stirred up against the Jews seems to be motivated by instinctive hatred of the Jewish people. And this is one of the signs that indicates that the people in question are not descendant from Israelites. Now, as well as Israelites or others amongst them, indications are that you also had, when the Assyrians took them into captivity, you had Canaanites and you had people from Edom, a neighboring people from Ammon, another neighboring people, and from Moab and others who went with them, intermixed with them, and may have a dominant influence amongst them, and are still there amongst them. And these may be the ones causing all the trouble. We don't know. We have to do another study on that factor, but it is a possibility that we will return to. At all events, at present, we are going to discuss the presence of Israelites amongst the Scottish people, and they're pertaining to the tribe of Manasseh, and whether or not there are other foreign alien elements who intermix with them or come to dominate them or have a determining influence over them, that we can leave for another time, another consideration. First of all, we have to show that Manasseh is present amongst them, and that in their own way they are representative of Manasseh, despite them they having non-Israelite attributes, possibly caused by the presence of alien elements in their population. Also, the inhabitants of Scotland were once great people, and once were hard workers, thrifty. They had brilliant minds. Many important inventions came from them in the Industrial Revolution, especially from the Lowlanders, but also from the others. Many of them were deeply religious, and they caused important improvements in the way people think, in philosophy, in religion, in science, in the military accomplishments, and other things. And today they still have this. They have other tendencies as well. A lot of them suffer from the effect of pills, of medicines, of alcohol, of TV, of living on the dole, of violence, of football, of all kinds of things that have not enabled them to express themselves, to express the inner spiritual attributes that they once proved to have. So we'll get back to that. First of all, we have to go and consider who were the Scottish people. The Scottish people are composed of different elements, different ethnic groups, according to history, comprised of the Scottish people. In the far north, you have the Norse, descendants of Scandinavians, Vikings and others. You find these in the far north, northeast and northwest, In the northwest, they intermix with Gaels, people similar to the Scottish. You have Gaels. The Gaels are similar to the Milesians of Scottish history. The Milesians of Ireland, similar to the Gaels, the same stock as the Gaels. And they're in the west of Scotland, the northwest of Scotland, and also to some degree in the centre. We also have the Britons who are in the southwest. They are similar to the Welsh. They neighbour the Lowlanders and intermix with them. And to the east of them, you have Angles, and the Britons and the Angles together comprise the Lowlanders, and they gave Scotland much of its intellectual accomplishments in other fields. And they were very important. And in addition to that, to the north of them, you have the Picts. See the accompanying map, and you'll be able to follow what we're saying. First of all in the Scottish Gaels, also known as the Scotty. They gave their name to Scotland, Scotty, the land of the Scotty. They were similar to the Gaelics and Milesians of Ireland. These culturally and historically, and also according to their own traditions, the Milesians had a tradition that were of Israelite descent, and also that there were, many of them were from the mixed multitude, the non-Israelite elements who joined the Israelites when they came out of Egypt. That was a tradition of theirs. So also maybe something to it. In Exodus 12, it says, Exodus 12:38, a mixed crowd, a multitude went up with the Israelites when they came out of Egypt. And the Milesians had a tradition that they were part of those who went up with the Israelites, who went out of Egypt with the Israelites. And we should keep this in mind. After that, we had the Scots. The Scots in the north were all important. The Scots also similar to the Gaels of Ireland, but they had differences of their own. Also, they had a mixture of Agathyrsi. Agathyrsi, who were a Scythian type people, and they were several groups of them were in the east. Some of them were close to Turkey, some of them by the Black Sea, in the north of the Black Sea, some of them in the Balkans, also others, all the same people. They moved around, eventually reached up to the Baltic. There are also reports of them fighting amongst or against the Scandinavians, the Agathyrsi, and they were identified according to the Chronicle of Ravenna in the 700s, which is a Byzantine historian who had dealings with them, treaties with them, traded with them, fought alongside them and against them. They knew what they were saying. They identified the Agathyrsi. They identified the Agathyrsi with the Khazars. So the Khazars are Agathyrsi. And this is from the Chronicle of Ravenna, which was in Italy, but it was part of the Byzantine bureaucracy. So this is more or less like an official report that was made, identifying the Agathyrsi with the Khazars, and it ties in with other factors we have concerning the Khazars. I wrote a book, at least one book, two books, but one book that has been published concerning the Khazars, and I studied the subject. The Khazars were quite important, and it could well be that they are to be identified with the Agathyrsi, or the Agathyrsi were a portion of them, and the Khazars themselves had a tradition that they were descended from the tribes of Manasseh and Simeon. So here we have Israelite tribe, and they joined the Picts and settled amongst the Picts. So here too we have elements from Manasseh coming to Scotland, and also we have a tendency that we're not, but groups from one tribe groups from the same tribe come from elsewhere to the same places. People tend to get back together. It's worth noting. All this happened before the Khazars converted to Judaism, but there had always been Israelite elements amongst them and traditions concerning their descent from the lost 10 tribes of Israel. And maybe the Scots, through the Picts, kept these traditions in some cases. There were also settlers from Scandinavia, such as the Vikings, who contributed to this ethnic mix. They settled amongst the Highland clans and islands along the coast and elsewhere. And different studies of ours also show that people from Scandinavia come from Israelite tribes, such as the Danes from Denmark, the Norwegians from Naphtali, the Swedes from Gad, and so on from other tribes. So all of these also came into Scotland. And then you had the Lowlanders. They are probably the majority of the Scottish people, even though you hear less of them than about the others. The Lowlanders were a mixture of Britons, similar to the Northern Welsh, along with Angles, like the descendants of Ephraim in England, and also Gaels. The Lowlanders in Scotland often became very devout Presbyterians, and they were fiercely committed to the Bible, to biblical values. In the USA, many of their descendants became fundamentalists who are now very strong supporters of Israel. So it's worth noting that the Scottish also gave their contribution in this way. And belief and respect for the Bible was ingrained amongst them very strongly. I met people from Scotland, and that was the impression I got, and it's confirmed from other sources. The descendants of Scotland became very important in the USA, as we have said. Many ancestors of the Scotch-Irish, also Scots, originate from the lowlands and borders regions before migrating to the Ulster plantation and later the American frontier. Many prior to the American Revolution, so in the 1600s, we also had the phenomenon of settling people from Scotland and also from England, going to Ulster and settling there in Ulster, alongside the Catholics in Ulster, the famine occasionally displacing them, or sometimes intermixing with them, in some cases becoming Catholics like themselves, in other cases converting the Catholics to Protestants. Much more of this interchange and swapping over of identities took place and is really known about. And at all events, this intermixture in Ulster caused its own identity, its own type of person known as the Scotch-Irish. And they too were very important in the formation of the USA. They're also known as Ulster Scots. And 35 out of the 46 US presidents have been, out of the first 46 US presidents, 35 of them had ancestral links to Scotland, or Ulster Scots heritage was also links to Scotland. These include George Washington, Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was actually more Irish than Scottish, but he was also up there in the group, and Bill Clinton. So too President Trump is a German father, and the Scottish mother from one of the islands off the coast, where we also find the presence of people from Judah, or people who identified as Jewish in ancient times, which is worth noting. Another